Welcome back. Well, Ernst & Young, a multinational professional services network, recently released its Africa Attractiveness Report 2020. Report, which is the 11th edition and the first since 2019, viewed all the recent events and prospects for the immediate future through the lens of the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, to tell us more about this, the message in this report, we're being joined by the partner, strategy and transaction at Ernst & Young Nigeria, John Wajumogu. Great to have you, Mr. John.
Hello, thank you. A pleasure to be here with you today, and good afternoon to
good afternoon.
Our listeners.
Great to have you. Well, your report recently released shows that Africa Attractiveness this is actually the first in 2019. What does this report say about the impact of COVID-19 on African economies?
Well, the sobering reality is that the COVID-19 pandemic impacted the Africa region much more than other countries. And for Nigeria, it is really a double-edged sword because we were already struggling to drive FDI investment into our economy, but also have the volume of it reduced significantly by the COVID-19. It's had some serious adverse implications for us. And most of the reason and why Africa suffered much more than other regions, it's largely due to a lack of diversification in our economy, whether from an export standpoint or whether it's from a fiscal diversification standpoint, that is the sources from which government generates revenues, and or whether it's from a GDP diversification standpoint.
Right.
African economies are largely dependent on energy extractives, and given that COVID-19, one of the biggest impacts is mobility restriction. You can see why they had a huge impact on the Africa vis-a-vis other regions.
And your report noted that, although foreign direct investment in Africa fell by 50% in 2020, Africa is still an attractive investment destination. What is the attraction there, and what sectors are most attractive?
Well, if you look at the demographic endowment, I mean, Africa is blessed with a very large and very young population. And if you even look at the region closer to us, in terms of the West Africa region, you're talking about people of 400 million, with 200 of them in Nigeria. That's a massive market. And most of them are below the age of 35 years old. So numbers still accounts for something. And with an increasing disposable income in the population, then you can even see how the value proposition becomes increasingly more evident. So that demographic dividend, that potential for a demographic dividend that accrue from a large and youthful population continues to be an attractive element for investment. And then add to that the improvement in digital technology and the as well as Industry 4.0. And the impact it has is that it really enables a leapfrogging of the traditional obstacles that has constrained investment flow to Africa in the form of an informal and fragmented economy, and certain times infrastructure deficits. With digital technology, we're able to bring more people into the mainstream economy and therefore increasing the scale and the volume of businesses that are happening. We've seen that already happening in the fintech space. We've seen that also happening in other industries, how the digital technology is helping to unlock value. So, and it's not surprising that 4 of the 5 unicorns in Africa is coming to Nigeria, and a number of investments that are looking towards the digital space. Then another thing that is also, another sector that is also experiencing a lot of growth is trade. And that comes on the back of the Africa Free Trade Agreement, which came into force earlier on this year, which recognizes the low levels of intra-trade that happens within Africa and tries to encourage and stimulate commercial activity and making the African place much more attractive and stem the loss of services and goods and value that is being exported out of Africa to Europe or Asia in terms of the goods that are being purchased that could be easily manufactured in this place. And then lastly, the infrastructure deficit that we've had. For example, Nigeria, we need $100 billion a year for the next 10 years to bridge the infrastructure gap. Therein also represents an opportunity to create, to be able to unlock value that's been stranded by the infrastructure deficit.
All right, so zooming out on the African continent now, interestingly, your report shows that East African economies grew the fastest in Africa last year. What did they do differently?
Well, to put that stat in context, it's easier to move from 1 to 2 than to 10 to 15. So they're coming from a low base, I would say. But also, but apart from that, I think that growth is a near perfect illustration of the need for a diversified economy. And that really is a simple answer. I mean, anchored by Kenya, the East Africa region has a much more diversified economy, and therefore was spared the adverse effects of the mobility restrictions of the pandemic and its impact on the extractive industries, of which the West and the South, in terms of mining for the South and the West, oil and gas, is really our chief source of exports and trade. So by being diversified, they were able to strengthen the foundation of economic transformation, which is tremendously important for building resilience. So again, diversification comes to the fore and is an illustration of how important it is for African economies.
All right, so but we've seen, inequality in vaccine distribution. How does EY think this will shape, Africa's economy as we enter 2022?
So for us, while the coronavirus has, thrown many of the ills of our society into sharp relief, whether it's from slow decision-making to a lack of safety net, it has also shown how far stakeholders, the community, is willing to go to help one another. And therein lays out I would say the interdependency that exists in society. So for us to resolve these inequities that we see, is that it will require a level of collaboration between government and the private sector, which will require broad-based equities in vaccination rollout to stem the adverse network effects of the pandemic, because we don't, in an increasingly smaller world, we live in a global village now. It is this sort of pandemic. It's easy. It's difficult to ward yourself off. So to stem the adverse effects, network effects of the pandemic, will require collaboration, whether it's government and government to government and private sector, in being able to develop a process that could create broad-based equities in vaccine distribution.
All right, Mr. John Wajamogu, Partner, Strategy and Transaction, EY Nigeria. Thank you for coming on the program today, and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Thank you.